Good morning everyone. I am Neelima, Associate Research, Center for Public Policy Research, and welcome to today's discussion on Africa in India's Geo-Strategic Map by Ambassador Rajiv, Bhatia, organized by the Center for Public Policy Research, Kochi. The Center for Public Policy Research is an independent public policy think tank based in Kochi. Our engagement in public policy that began in 2002 has initiated open dialogue, policy changes and institutional transformation in the areas of international relations and security, livelihood, education, urban reform, health, governance, law and related subjects. To know more about what we do, please do visit our website www.cppr.in. Today we are privileged to be joined by Ambassador Rajiv Bhatia. He served as Ambassador to Myanmar and Mexico and as High Commissioner to Kenya, South Africa and Lesotho. He dealt with a part of South Asia while posted as Joint Secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs. At present, he is a distinguished fellow, Foreign Policy Studies Program at the Gateway House. He is also a member of CII's International Advisory Council, Trade Policy Council and Africa Committee. He is the author of 3 books, India in the Global Affairs, Perspectives from Sapu House, India-Myanmar Relations Changing Contours, India-Africa Relations Changing Horizons. I extend my warm welcome to you, Ambassador Bhatia. Meanwhile, at the end of the talk, we will be having a Q&A session. I encourage all the online participants to put in their questions in the chat box. Since ancient times, India and the African continent have had cultural interactions, and in the recent years, the relationship has grown in terms of its geostrategic value and is economically more mature than in the past. From the initial focus on the political issues such as support for decolonisation, both India and Africa further focused on advanced cooperation in multilateral forums for the South-South cooperation, and in the last 4 decades, economic and security issues have increasingly come to the fore. India-Africa relations are also growing in the mineral sector, making India a net importer in this sector. India is also Africa's 4th largest trading partner. India also actively participates in the infrastructural development of Africa along with countries like Japan through initiatives like Asia-Africa Growth Corridor. Engagement with Africa supports India's global ambitions as New Delhi continues to see itself as an advocate for the global South. The African Union's official entry into the G20 under India's presidency is the latest example of global South cooperation. Without any further ado, I invite Ambassador Bhatia to take over from here for his presentation.
Africa in India's Geo-Strategic Map. It says so much things. It has such a signal and it really triggers the basic thought that the relationship with Africa is not just about a few dollars. It has a standing of its own. As we know, I checked the meaning in the dictionary. Geo-strategic means things relating to strategy that have implications for the geopolitical relations. So that's a very large umbrella. Fundamentally, it is saying that Africa is India's neighbor, that Indian Ocean does not divide it, Indian Ocean links the two. The problem is in our mind, where we keep looking either to West, Europe and America, or to East, Indonesia and Japan. And we keep forgetting that right in our neighborhood, starting from Mauritius onwards, there is a whole continent with which we have had such close historical relations that it is nothing short of a strategy. And the only other point I can make in the beginning is that this aspiration of India to be a great power or a aspiring power. We already are a global player. I think we must make very clear we are a global player, but we are not yet a global power. No matter how some young scholars out of enthusiasm project India to be. Even foreign minister would say that we have aspiration to be much more than what we are. And my submission is that without taking Africa into consideration, And without elevating our strategic relationship with Africa, that aspiration cannot be achieved. I say this not just because I spent time in Africa, so I became a little bit more knowledgeable. It's definitely not partisanship, because against my 7 years in Africa, I've served in other parts of the world as well, from Mexico and Canada to Lebanon to Indonesia to Myanmar. And of course, in Delhi, one has the opportunity to handle multiple files. But it is an overall view that given the importance of Africa in the world today and the world by 2050, India has no choice but to focus on this in a big way. Now, of course, I know I'm among journal scholars, and I don't think they like to have this, free consciousness kind of speech, and I'm not giving that. It's a very structured presentation, and of course, I already shared a copy with the institution, so you're welcome to have a look at it. And I will not even cover all the topics here, because out of 20 minutes that I have, already 3 minutes are gone. So I will cover what I can, and then the rest can be done by questions and discussions. Greetings from my think tank, Gateway House. I'm sure all of you have heard about it. Its strong point is its website, and it would be wonderful if some of you could visit it if you have not already done so. And I do feel that when we look at Africa, it is not just bilateral. It becomes very boring. India, Kenya, India, Tanzania, India, Nigeria. We should today look at Africa as a whole, that is India, Africa, but not just bilateral, in the larger multilateral context at a time when the world order is changing in a big way. The more you take the wider look, the more you will appreciate as to why Africa is important. And a quick word here. History books refer to Africa as a dark continent. What is this dark? Dark means black. Are we referring to the black people? First of all, it is not correct, because Africa has people of all kinds of colors. There are whites, there are browns, there are light blacks, there is sub-Saharans, there is North Africans, Moroccans, Algerians. So it is not just about the color. Is it dark because there is no sun there? Completely wrong. They have more sunlight than many other parts of the world. I submit darkness refers to our own ignorance of Africa. Somehow, our education, impacted by the West, began to believe that somehow Africans are lesser mortals. It is not worth knowing. But it is a continent of 54 countries, by another count 55 countries, which means 25% of the number of countries that are member of the UN are there. Can we afford to ignore them? Can we afford not to know about them, and yet go on to the center stage and say India has become a global power? Clearly, no. And especially where we are talking today, in Kochi, where you can almost smell Africa, it's even more important. And I think the fact that you chose this topic hopefully means that some of you, the younger scholars, will study Africa more. And that's why we say Waka Waka this time for Africa. And I've chosen deliberately to show you that the young Africans are so full of being and momentum and speed and life that you have to see to believe it. So is Africa very big? Is it bigger than India? Yes, sir. In terms of land, about 10 times. So against our 3 million square kilometers, they are about 30 million kilometers. So 10 Indias can be fitted into the African continent, and they have massive economic zone around there. So the maritime assets and space of Africa are incredible. They can't use all of them because of their own problems, but it is there. And while Africa is so much bigger in terms of land, they have the same population as India. Now just let that sink in, that here we are, all living in congested land, and they have one thing that is not short, which is land. What does it mean? It means that Africa can be the food basket of the world for the posterity. And yet, Africa cannot feed itself. Africa does not produce even enough to feed itself, exactly as India was in the 60s and 70s, which some of the senior colleagues will remember. India has changed course. So Africa can also change course, and therefore massive possibilities in the field of agriculture. All that I do is that I highlight here 2 points. One, what G20 summit in Delhi achieved. The entry of African Union as a member of G20, and more importantly, the integration of African priorities in G20 summit declaration. These 2 things have to be taken into account. So, in other words, you have to be interested in Africa, but you should also be knowledgeable about G20 and the multilateral story. If you are only G20, you will say, Africa is not important. If you know Africa and not G20, you will start getting into very boring details and you would lose the audience. The marriage between the two can make a big difference. And all that I recommend is that when we study Africa, we should have certain degree of passion and empathy. So this is one people who suffered even before we suffered. They suffered at the hands of those who started the practice of slavery, and they also suffered at the hands of those who did the colonization. And the matter did not end there. Even after they became independent, the old rulers continued to exploit them. So we were much luckier, but this is a story of subjugation, exploitation, subordination, and it should create in our heart a desire to know more and to have sympathy for these people. This is my favorite way to present Africa to you, transitions in Africa. In my book, Routledge publication, which came out 2 or 3 years back, I don't particularly propagate it, but it was a book which I wrote during the 2 years of COVID. Sitting at home, that doesn't mean I didn't do research. We have some finest researchers in Gateway House. And today you don't have to go to libraries to read and write a book. 2 years I sat at home, and there is this particular woman who had access to resources on the internet. And of course, I had my experience and I had my own basic books at home. And the book came out, and it makes the point that Africa is growing very fast. It's already 17% of the world population. By 2050, it will be really 25% of the planet. So every 4th person will be in Africa, which means just imagine the size of the market. And anything you produce in India, they will consume because they don't produce all that much. Whether you are making a shirt, an undergarment, a car, an electric scooter, or even simple pen or pencil that we make it all the time, you can make for 1/4 of the world population. So that is important. But at the same time, I think we should also be guided by looking at Africa through a sense of realism. So I'm just juxtaposing these 2 cover stories of the economics. There was a time in the 90s when they said Africa is a hopeless continent. And then another breed of Afrikaners came and they started painting Africa in a big positive light. Africa is rising. The fact is that Africa rises and declines like any other part. They have done some very good things, but they also still have the news of military coups, the catastrophes, poverty, the rest of it, decline on SDG goals, etc. But overall, I think we can say that many countries are doing very well, and one of the major issues which they succeeded in resolving was to create a transcontinental African free trade area. The agreement has been signed, implementation is underway. They are nowhere near yet fulfilling it, but they are taking steps. They are removing the barriers, they are establishing connectivity. So someday there can be one single Africa-wide market. It may not happen in the next 5 years or even 10 years, but it will happen. That's what Africans feel. And then while a lot of negative things happened, COVID once again saw the world practicing discrimination against Africa. There are countries such as Canada which had bought more vaccines and put them on shelf. And when the shelf life ended, they destroyed them. But there were thousands, maybe millions of people in Africa who couldn't get the vaccine because they had neither the means to produce them nor the money to buy them. And that's why whatever India, for example, did to share with them, they were very grateful. But again, this shows discrimination that the West, when it came to this catastrophe, they only thought of themselves rather than of the people they had exploited. And the big cheer, as I mentioned, from G20 summit was the entry of African Union. India gets full credit. It generated a momentum. Prime Minister Modi played a big role in there, and you know all about it. I don't have to go into it. Here, I know CPPR is very interested in China as well. No matter which topic will come, they will. Nilima ask me about China, Myanmar, and inevitably China, Africa will come in. As a former ambassador, I don't like to waste my limited television time to talk too much about China. I'm here to talk about India. But as a scholar, I know that without the China factor, the story is incomplete. So I would like to say that not merely China, but there are at least 6 or 7 major partners which are very active in Africa. And they are the US, EU, Japan, they are Australia, Brazil, UAE, and there are 1 or 2 other countries. I think we can work with all of them except China, because Chinese scholars have a different view. They keep saying that China and India can work together in Africa. I'm afraid it is a dream. And it became a nightmare after Galawan of June 2020. The question of our working with China does not arise. And therefore, we have to seriously study what Chinese are doing there. There's any number of data available on thousands of kilometers of roads, railway tracks, dams, power stations, sports stadium Chinese have created in Africa. There's any number of data suggesting China is number 1 trading partner, number 1 source of investment, etc. But I suggest that we try to take some good takeaways from them. So there are lots of bad takeaways also. The debt trap diplomacy of China is in full swing in Africa. But the good point is, 1, heavy political commitment to China-Africa relationship. I think we should emulate them. And secondly, very speedy delivery on commitments, implementation. We are improving, but I think we should see how Chinese do and learn from it. Beyond this, I don't have to say much because I'm interested in collaboration between India and countries like Brazil, Russia, US, EU, the rest of them, Germany, France, to promote our common interests in Africa. So in this context, I won't say much about India-Africa relations in 20th century and India-Africa partnership in the 21st century. I've packed a lot of details there, but let me just show you the slides and come to the last 2 decades. I think that will be more appropriate. This was my favorite line when I was ambassador in South Africa, and it used to always command attention that our relationship is crafted by common ideas, interests, and icons. They revere Mahatma Gandhi just as we revere Nelson Mandela and Jomo Kenyatta. We may not know much about them, but we should. And these are the 5 great men who created the non-aligned movement. It's very relevant. I put in the photograph because today there is a debate as to who is the leader of the global south. My answer, non-aligned movement did not have a single leader. And so global south too will not have a single leader because both are marked by diversity. But look at this rare photograph of Nehru, Nkrumah, Nasser, Sukarno and Tito. They were the titans of the international relations scene when we were studying in the university. So, my advice, please do keep refreshing your memory about history. And then, really, India began to rediscover Africa in the late 90s of the previous century. And I should know, because in the Foreign Service itself, there is resistance to a posting in Africa. So when I received my first posting as High Commissioner to Kenya, some people came to commiserate. He said, "What did you do? Why are they sending you to Africa?" And I was, on the other hand, very happy. I was going at a fairly young stage as your ambassador. And then I one day saw Foreign Minister Gujarat's statement saying, "We are now going to change the posting policy. We are going to send promising young diplomats to Africa." And now almost everybody has to go to Africa because we are opening missions right, left and center in Africa. So in that light, India-Africa partnership, very quickly 3 phases, 2000 to 2007 under Dr. Manmohan Singh, an economic dimension was created, more focus on trade and raising investment. At the beginning of this period, that is in 2000, India's trade with Africa was $5 billion. And guess where we have reached today in 23? $100 billion. So it is not empty talk, Mr. Bhatia, fresh from Africa, is selling Africa. From 5 to 100, from about $55 billion of total investments to now about $70 billion investment. So it's a happening market, and we can only ignore at our parents. So when you meet your young people, startups, etc., please feel free to talk a little bit about it. Do we have Africa policy? Yes, we have. I think you can read Prime Minister Modi's speech in moving on. So,
Yes, yes.
yeah, we can just
Go back to
yeah.
the previous.
So this was the speech which gives all the principles, etc. I don't have to go into them. But we can study also the political side, economic side, and the third side, cultural side, to know that it's a very rich relationship. Lot of UN peacekeeping work has been done by Indian Army, Navy, and Air Force. They are much liked and loved there. Lot of women have gone into peacekeeping duty. The Africans love it because they've still not been able to treat their women. Many countries on gender equality basis. So when there are oppression against African women, they simply love to see Indian women military officers. It creates a completely different image of India there. The last line I added almost at the last minute to say that policy towards Africa reflects the tenets of India's domestic policy of social justice and inclusion. This is not my idea, this has been projected by the government very rightly. What the present government says is that just as within India, we are trying to promote the weaker sections of the society, be it youth, women, tribals, whatever. And we are going to secure the goals of social justice and inclusion. We are transforming or transplanting that idea into foreign policy, especially with regard to the global south. Global south meaning developing countries, of which Africa is a big heart. So if we do various kinds of assistance to Africa, this is because we feel they are the weaker elements of the international community. I know Nilima will ask me questions on trade. So this table is slightly dated. I have not yet found a beautiful table, but I have given to Dr. Dhanuraj the latest data. We have done a report for VIF and it was all there. And just 3 days back, Foreign Minister said we have crossed $100 billion of trade. So we have authentic source there. These are some of the major export-import destinations. You can study them at your. But you can see South Africa is number 1 in both lists. Nigeria is number 1 in both lists. And the number 3 position keeps changing. So when we are tired of looking at all of Africa, we have to focus on these 5 or 10 countries. There is no doubt on that. And then we can keep going. Investments, as I said, about 70 billion. It mentions all the sources and places. And I will not go into the kind of assistance we provide to Africa, but it's something worthwhile. This latest is about $13 billion on 208 development projects of all kinds. Water, electricity, hospitals. India is building there in as many as 52 countries out of 54. So this is the subject all by itself. So India is not just talking, but is actually helping Africa, and this is very clear. All kinds of grant assistance, capacity building, training, and then we can go on in terms of domains, education, health, agriculture, connectivity, all this is being done. Of course, beyond business, there is cricket. We almost missed the chance to contest against South Africa. President of South Africa had announced that he would invite himself to see the match, and he had announced that India and South Africa will be in the final. Unfortunately for him, his team lost, and so it is going to be an intra-quad final on Sunday. Much can be said about all this, but you will appreciate almost run out of my time. There are challenges and prospects, but let me just take to my final slide where I offer a 5-point recommendation as to how India-Africa formula can be, the partnership can be further strengthened. And this is again a small tip to youngsters. It is not enough for you to do only analysis. Analysis must lead to some advice, some recommendation. Because then, as a think tank, we are not in a university format. Think tanks are expected to keep giving ideas. Don't worry, nobody will listen. Sometimes out of 10, maybe 1 or 2 they will pick up. But that is their problem. Our problem is that we do a solid, objective, scientific, research-based analysis. And even if you, at the end, add a paragraph, if you have some idea, if there is some recommendation that is coming out, at least that is how I looked when I was ambassador, and I tried to do that, as a scholar as well. 5 points very quickly. I think we have done a great deal on G20, but now we must focus on implementation. I was hearing Amitabh Kant at JNU just 2 days back, he said, we have achieved this, we have achieved that. Yes, perfect. It is all there in the New Delhi Declaration. Can we implement, or can we make sure that others implement it? If you don't implement, then there is no point in saying that for climate change action we don't need billions, but we need trillions of dollars. So implementation. Second, this is my perpetual request to the government, and we did 3 India-Africa summits and then we forgot about it. The 4th summit has to be done, and I was very happy that Jaishankar, my very dear colleague, he joined service in 76, I joined in 72, and he said, we must try to do this summit in 2024, so I agree. And the third is focus on the economic pillar. Just remember, India and Africa are going to be 42% of the world population in 2050. So when this lot will reach our stage, this is when 42% of the world population will be Africa and India. So if we can connect now and produce for them and help them to produce as well, because they need employment also. It's not that we will make in India and said. I remember Gandhiji had said in his time that the commerce between India and Africa will be of ideas, not of goods. My deepest respect to the Mahatma, but the world has changed. The commerce will be of both ideas and goods and services. So we have to think like that. And of course, third space we have talked only briefly. It has to be extensive. Think tanks, media, universities, youth, women, all parts of polity have to be connected with the polity there. How do you know, sitting in Kochi, what is happening in Kenya or what is happening in Nigeria? Yes, internet is there, but if you have 2 or 3 young people connected to you, you will have a totally different picture, and of course when you go there, you will have the real picture. And my last point really is about a subject which is not receiving center stage attention these days. How do we treat African students in India? African diaspora, African students. Not merely we have to treat them correctly, with civility and respect, but now there is a strong recommendation which Gateway House has made that when African students come and study in university, some of the brighter ones should be given temporary work visa to gain some experience in Indian business condition. Why? Because they will become our ambassadors when they go back. Why? Also because the justice demands it. Our children go to Canada and US, become a degree, automatically get permission to work. So if India wants to be an aspiring power, India has to also raise standards, and that's what we have to do. My last is all. We don't have to go into all this. I've just put in some of the books, articles, references, also some readings. So anybody who chooses to be brave enough, one of you, to try to take interest, you can start from all this. You don't have to go anywhere. And my prized photograph from South Africa, Nelson Mandela, which was a very special moment, and of course many stories lie behind the couple of meetings I had with him. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Bhatia. It was enlightening to listen to your presentation covering all the important aspects of India-Africa ties, including the contemporary issues of the Global South, leadership of the Global South and G20, Africa's development, India-Africa relations, and the present state of play. Now, I would like to ask you, as you have mentioned, I will be asking you about the economic related question. So, the Indian government throughout history has undertaken serious decisions and forums which enable both India and Africa to create a safe business environment that help to promote strong bilateral relations and investment opportunity with African countries. For example, India-Africa Trade, Investment and Economic Cooperation Forum. The trade between India and Africa has been estimated to be around $82.53 billion in 2021 to 22, but you have mentioned has reached 100 billion as of 2023. And India's exports to Africa have grown from US dollar to only 2.63 billion in 2011 to 12 to US dollar 37.88 billion in 2021 to 22. And India's imports from Africa have increased from US dollar 39.31 billion in 2011 to US dollar 44.64 billion in 2021 to 22. India has also emerged as the fifth largest investor in Africa, investing over US dollar 54 billion in the continent. And India's investments are mainly concentrated in natural resources, manufacturing, and infrastructure sectors. So, in this slide, could you shed some light on the challenges which will be faced in this sector and the prospects for future growth in the economic sector?
Thank you very much. First, to clarify, I have not seen the questions in advance. I want to be able to answer them as we listen to each other, although Neelima very kindly offered to share. So, essential point here is how can the economic relationship be further strengthened? What is holding back on progress on trade and investment? I think the first thing is information or understanding gap. In some quarters, in those quarters in Africa, in India, there is a risk averseness. People focus on the negative news in Africa. They are not able to access the real news of Africa. It is true, as I said, there is illness, there is insecurity, there is military coup in parts of Africa. But among the fastest developing economies, there are a sizable number of countries belong to Africa. So we have to keep in mind that you go where opportunities are and you be cautious when you are dealing with countries that has risks. But having said that macro point, I think our government also needs to do more. I think whenever we from the academia talk to the business people, they very frankly tell us about their needs, their concerns. They need capital, a new trade development fund. They also point to difficulties on the insurance side. They also keep talking about the lack of connectivity to many capitals. So my suggestion is that all these constraints need to be discussed openly and frankly between the government representatives and the business representatives so that we can perform better. I feel that we used to be quite concerned until about 3 years back. Until COVID, it was all moving very slowly. It has gone down the bilateral India-Africa trade to $55 billion. Then it began to rise and reached about 75 and now it's gone to 100. So it seems to me that in the next 3-4 years, if we do well, we can easily target $150 billion of trade with them. And of course, that requires more investment, so that has to go up. And the crucial thing that my African friends tell me is don't sell all finished products. Sell semi-finished products, let us do finishing, so we create income. Similarly, when we are buying things from them, the natural products, the minerals, oil and gas, etc., can we not process some of that in Africa as well? India should not think like a Western country. India should think like a friend of Africa. That is the message. I am fairly confident, having lived there and followed Africa closely, that economic relationship has a good future, but the Indian government has to do more, and of course African governments too have to do more if they want India's investment.
Thank you, sir. But I would like to ask another as a follow-up question. So, what are the trade and investment opportunities for Indian companies in Africa? If you could highlight on that.
I think you can almost look at the sectors where we are strong. I think agriculture is a very important sector. I think agri technology and agri equipment, as I said right at the beginning, if we can give to ourselves the overall goal that we are going to help Africa to become the bread basket of the world. If there is one country that can take upon that mission, it is India. So that is there. Secondly, the health sector. They are really underdeveloped in health sector, and anything that you produce, whether it is medicines, it is equipment, it is technology, it is services, there is a ready market. Now Apollo, etc., setting up hospitals there. People come here for medical tourism because there are not enough facilities there. So we can push very strongly not only our pharma products but the entire range of health services, and then of course digital public infrastructure. DPI, there are countries after countries which don't have facility of fast payments, the Aadhaar related facilities, and India has offered this to them. India has promoted DPI very strongly through G20. But now we need to take the next step. We need to have bilateral agreements with all interested African countries and work out the administrative arrangements, the money arrangements, and just go ahead. The whole world is waiting for us to move forward.
Thank you, sir. And also, you have mentioned the diaspora aspect, which is like neglected. So, how can we improve the people-to-people connect which we need in Africa? Any suggestions?
Actually, diaspora factor has of late not been neglected. It has been pushed and promoted quite proactively by the present government. I think I must give full credit to them. The issue is that obviously the diaspora in Western countries end up getting greater attention. Even in the Gulf, of course, that is diaspora of a different kind, they are all Indian passport holders. But I think our leadership, when it visits Africa, Prime Minister, President, Vice President, they always, even Foreign Minister, when they go to an African country, invariably in their official engagement, there is an interaction with the Indian diaspora. My point here is that, again, from real experience, diaspora has played a big role in the economic activities in Africa. Take, for example, Kenya, Tanzania, South Africa, Nigeria. Indians are big employment creators. They are industrialists. They run institutions. So we need to shortlist some of the successful Indian stakeholders in Africa and build with them, new models of cooperation. At the same time, we have to be careful. Don't just focus on India, because then the Africans, the blacks will get upset. We still have to give primary attention to the local people, their leaders, their institutions. So a balanced but calibrated approach would be helpful.
Until now, we have talked about the contemporary issues, but if we go back to the hardcore security issues, how can India and Africa enhance their cooperation in maritime security partnership in the Western Indian Ocean, addressing issues like piracy, IUU's issue, human trafficking, etc.?
Now you're drawing a diplomat and a scholar into tough waters, but indeed, matters relating to oceans have now become a part of discourse on diplomacy and foreign policy. I cannot imagine developing a strategic relationship with a partner and say, I will not handle defense and maritime and the rest of it. I think India has been very conscious of this, and Defense Ministry has been running a very elaborate program. Raksha Mantri holds annual defense dialogue with more defense exhibition that's going on. And then not merely the academic level, but actual maritime security exercises with a number of African countries, Mauritius, Kenya, Tanzania, all that is happening. On top of that, when it comes to piracy, I think Indian Navy rendered a sterling service starting from 2007 to 2008 onwards. And that is when the Chinese Navy also came in. They used that as a pretext to start raising their profile in the Indian Ocean. And therefore, Indian Navy and Indian government's responsibilities went up even further. You would have seen recent reports how carefully Indian Navy monitors the activities of the Chinese ships and submarines in our area. So, there is no doubt that many African countries are enamored of what China offers. But once again, we notice that most African countries also want the engagement with India. So, as I said earlier, we have to try to raise our profile to protect our interests.
Thank you so much. That's all from my side. And now I would like to open it for the discussion from the audience. You can go ahead with questions.
Certainly. Special reward for the person who asked the first question. It has to be the younger people to begin with. I'm not expecting you to ask me about. Please feel free. Please feel free.
Sir, I'm Anu Alato, Senior Associate here at PR. So, my question is from your presentation where you said about the multilateral engagement. But have you missed out on any countries, to be specific, to have a bilateral engagement in the continent? Is there any potential country where we haven't started any investment or haven't? So you have mentioned about South Africa, Nigeria, because we have excellent trade with them. Is there any country which we have missed out?
Well, that's a question that compels you to reflect. I think basically there are countries where we have begun, but we are nowhere near the climax. I think if you have a look at the names of countries where we have opened the new missions, then the answer will become very clear. They may be smaller countries, of course, there have been countries such as a very big country, DRC, Congo, which is very rich in minerals, and where working is not easy because sometimes there is instability, etc. But Congo is there, Namibia is there. Now Sudan we did a lot, but then Sudan got converted into Sudan and South Sudan. So it was there. Then in North Africa, Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia, there is a continuing attempt, more can be done. In East Africa, I think focus has been on Tanzania and Kenya. More can be done with Uganda, even though it's a small country. So, even near South Africa, Lesotho, which I represented India at, the issue is very simple. India has to run its Africa policy at three distinct levels. One at the continental level, the other at the regional level through the regional economic communities, and third at the individual African countries level. So first issue would be to look at the major trading or investment partners. You will pick up 10 to 15 countries out of 55. Then the second category is of the kind of country that you have in mind. So wherever we are opening new missions, that is where the potential is.
Thanks.
So we have a question online. So it is from Abhishek. Blue or ocean-based economy has the potential. Have we taken new initiatives in this regard? In which direction are the conversations heading when it comes to blue economy?
Well, that is a question which is close to my heart. I've been helping India's apex Industry Chamber FICCI on their research and outreach on blue economy. We have several partners. We have partners with regional groupings like BIMSTEC and ASEAN. With Africa, largely cooperation is through the Indian Ocean Rim Association, IORA. And they have a special working group where we involve the East African coastal countries, others, and India. But my grip is that all this has been largely at the level of talks. I think time has come for us to move to specific projects. So we should pick up either one or two or more countries, particularly on the eastern coast, starting from Djibouti going right down to South Africa. Conceive projects, whether for maritime security, whether for promotion of fishing, whether for green ships and others, and see how through specific projects we can start developing solid links. Otherwise, frankly, a mere conversation or even a seminar can only go up to a point. It cannot result in tangible cooperation.
Any questions?
Hello sir, I'm Jishnu. I'm one of the business associates here. But my question is not related to that. I have two questions. First question is, India and Africa being a biologically rich hotspot, how can India leverage, or the relationship between India and Africa leverage the genetic conversation and preserving the genetic database? Since after COVID, we know that the origins of most of the viral diseases and other pathogens that emerge from Africa, similar that India's Western Ghats also see. Are we missing out on that aspect? The second question is, in the news we always see that there is an issue with Indian pharmaceuticals supplied to the African continents getting rejected, or they are not performing as good as what we supply to other countries. So are we getting a name that we supply third quality products to Africa? Because there are a lot of rejections happening, especially after 2018, 2019. The cough syrup issue, the eye drop issues. So how can we leverage and improve that? And also a follow-up question on that. Since we both are a biological hotspot and genetic hotspot, can we develop a gene bank with the cooperation with the African Union and as well as India and with Japan, given we have a good trilateral relation with Japan as well? So not depending on the NCBI data of USA or EMBL of the Europe. Do we have a potential? Because there is a lot of potential, because even US uses the African database to develop it. So how can we leverage that?
Thank you very much. I think let me pick up first your second question. And first and third I can combine. On the second question, I think yes, there have been a few very odd cases where I remember tests, sent into one or two countries, ended up having tragedies, children were killed. But it's a very aberration. It's an exception that proves the rule, and the rule is that Indian medicines are very welcome across Africa. In fact, it is the other way. That is, when they were dying of certain illnesses, and India was able to, send generic drugs as they were getting free from copyright situation, they really brought down the prices. They were as effective as the medicines available from the US. And Africans simply loved it. In my own time, even in South Africa, which is a richer country, they welcomed medicines in a big way. And similarly, during the COVID period, as I mentioned, very few countries actually came out to help Africa. China did, but China's vaccine won't work. China's equipment was supposed to be faulty. So this impression that there is a very widespread negativity about India's product is completely wrong. And yet, I think our authorities have to be vigilant. It should be a 100% situation because it concerns health and life of people. So, I think those very few cases were investigated, and I hope there will be more information available in the public domain. So, no wrong conclusions are created, or an adversary of India does not misuse them to malign India. India's record on pharmaceutical products and on medical services is excellent. On the first and third question, you draw me into more very specialized area. What I would like to say is that S&T cooperation, science and technology cooperation, between India and certain African countries has been proceeding well, but it has to do better. And I know that in bilateral arrangements with some of the North African countries, East African countries, West African countries, this whole business of genetic research and cooperation figures, but I am not really au fait as to what is happening as of now. What we can say is that S&T cooperation definitely needs to be expanded, and I brought a copy of the India-Africa study report of VIF, and you would see in that an article by Pastor Bhaskar Balakrishnan on the S&T side. So you can even see it from the website of VIF. There's a whole very good report. He's one of our top experts on the subject. That might perhaps throw more information on the issue that you are looking for.
Thank you.
So we have a few more questions from online participants. So
Good, somebody is listening.
So India has recently started 2 overseas campuses in Africa, IIT Madras Zanzibar campus and the National Forensic Sciences University in Uganda. How can India's knowledge diplomacy help in strengthening ties with Africa? What are the challenges involved?
I missed the first slide, sorry.
How can India's knowledge diplomacy help?
Yes, first slide. Yeah.
India has started 2 overseas campuses in Africa. One is the IIT Madras Zanzibar campus and the other one is National Forensic Sciences University in Uganda. So how can India's knowledge diplomacy help in strengthening the ties with Africa, and what are the challenges involved in this?
I think we can say that India has just begun. It has begun on a very solid foundation of educational cooperation between the two regions, which took several forms. First of all, thousands of African students are in Indian universities every year. Secondly, thousands of African students come to India under the ITEC program, Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation Initiative. And now this third pillar is emerging, where Indian universities and institutions of excellence will open branches in African countries. This IIT campus in Zanzibar is going to be a pioneer. I read about it and I learned that it is not just for the Tanzanian students. It will be for other African countries which want to send their children there. And IIT has such a massive brand value and there is competition. If Madras has gone, can Kanpur and Kharagpur and Bombay be behind? I don't think so. So we have just begun. Challenges, I think there has to be persistent interest by the African side, and they have to put in what is required in the partnership. It cannot be fully presented as India's gift. And this is what happened in Zanzibar. I think in terms of building and in terms of land and in terms of other facilities, the local government came forward and we provided the grey matter and we control over the syllabus and the teaching, at least in the beginning. So that model will work. The problem is we are willing to go wherever there is a genuine, persistent interest on part of the African side.
Thank you, sir. We have more questions, but I'll make some questions from Rajiv and people sitting here. So, anybody has a question?
Hi sir, I'm Maria Francis, Senior Associate working here. So I would like to know what is the scope of space cooperation with the African countries. So from my reading, I understand that there is a relationship, space relationship with Tunisia, Egypt, and very few countries. But what is the scope of further exploring this particular sector with Africa?
I think there is immense scope. When initially you hear of Africa and space satellite, you say, have they got their priorities wrong? Let them first take care of the basic needs. But that would be a wrong approach.
Yes.
I think space technology today and digital technology today are part and parcel of the development process. Satellites can tell you where the water is, what the condition of the agriculture is, what is the extent of desertification. All these are real issues. So first of all, we should change our mindset. I think it's a very valid question. And I'll refer you to the same report that I mentioned. You should have a look at it. I think there is some mention of details about what is happening in the space sector as well. I think no area is closed to India-Africa cooperation.
Just expanding on what you said, especially the cooperation between militaries, especially the maritime field. Now, when I joined the National Defence Academy in January 17, there were already cadets from Ethiopia, Kenya, and other African countries. And we have been cooperating with them. I have myself exercised with those navies starting from 74 many times. And in fact, when Comoros got its independence for their celebrations, our ships were deployed there. The Prime Minister deployed us there, and some of our units took part in the celebration. And similarly, more recently, I forget the name of the ship, but one of the African countries, when they had a major disaster, cyclone struck and had a problem, before they could react, one of the Indian naval ships which was deployed in that area reached that area to render assistance in food, medicines, etc. And as you are well aware, just off Gulf of Guinea now we have been exercising our ships. So, military cooperation, maritime cooperation, one area. Would you also feel that, especially since we are in Cochin and we have a major shipyard here, shipbuilding is another area that we can look at further cooperation?
Thank you very much. I think I agree with your observations. I think Indian military enjoys a very positive image among African countries, and this is for two reasons. One, they know that this is a professional force. And second, it is completely apolitical. This combination many African countries don't understand at all. And as a result, there is no shortage of one thing in Africa, which is military coups. And they have come into contact with the military from India, not just through bilateral exchanges, but as I said, through the UN peacekeeping experiences. So it has a very high image when it comes to our defense forces, and there is a lot of acceptability. It's just a question of we have limited resources, and we have to compete in a situation where some of the other countries have more resources. How do we compensate? We do it by our human approach and by our professional. So in every mission where I served as ambassador, we had a defense attaché, and he was the lead, forging defense cooperation, and worked very well, undoubtedly. And then, essentially from there, what is happening now in Africa is that they also want to come to us, in terms of more more things. But I think I have to just digress a little bit to say here that there are two things which are very important for the broader context. One is that the high level visibility of India in Africa must remain high. We did a study for my book between 2015 and 2019. This period, 15 to 19, was the period when a very sizable number of visits took place by India's President, Vice President and Prime Minister. Not before and not later. This was the period in depth. They decided we have to keep going, and this really had a good impact. But then COVID came, and then other things happened, and this has died down. So this has to be revived. Africans love protocol, they love glamour, and they want to see the leader to believe that India has become much more interested in us than it was before. And the second point I want to make, I heard some figure the other day saying that that we are ready to do everything that is possible for Africa and we don't need anything from Africa. This is wrong. India's diplomacy is not 100% altruism. And I'm being quite frank. India runs a diplomacy which is realistic, which promotes our interests. And therefore, you then will ask as to what is our interest in Africa. And that is where I come back to the topic's title, Geo-Strategic. Africa has immense treasure of natural products, critical minerals, oil and gas. If others are interested in these treasures, so is India. Secondly, as and when the UN reform takes place, you need those 54 votes. Okay? So you cannot say, no, I don't need anything, I will just go and we are not unalloyed saints. We do good work. We believe in human-centric development, but we do it in a realistic manner. So indeed, Africa's geostrategic importance, a very good word coined by CPPR today, has to be kept in mind.
Yeah, thank you, sir. We have another question online. So, how is the engagement with Rwanda or East African community? Which sectors specifically in Rwanda are potential growth sectors in East African area?
So, on two aspects. On Rwanda, I studied bilateral relations a little bit, and I mentioned this in my book. Rwanda has completely transformed its image from a country completely riven by bloody civil war, and also by a leader who stayed on. But the leader and his team have done wonders. Those who visit Rwanda are completely surprised to see so much progress in such a short time in terms of the progress in the capital, in terms of, you realize, if I'm not mistaken, I think 50% of the membership of the parliament is women. So in terms of social progress as well. And Rwanda, such a small country, is now a strategic partner of India. So this is interesting, and I think Fore, for example, also held the dialogue there, Kigali dialogue, which also shows that there is some attempt to connect with them. This is wonderful. With regard to EAC, Eastern African Community, I don't hear too much about it, although it exists and I'm sure it is making progress, and it certainly has expanded. It was a regional community with just 3 or 4 nations, but more have joined in. I think EAC needs to raise its profile, public profile in the world as such, but certainly in India. Because East Africa is our natural partner. Why natural? Because quite apart from the past, when Indians like Indonesians went through the ocean route via Mauritius to South Africa, in modern history, people in Gujarat will make these cows, boats, put their food that will last them for 2 weeks and hope that the winds will take them to the Kenyan coast, to Mombasa or to Delhi. And I visited those areas. And that is how our interaction with Africa began in modern times. Long before Vasco da Gama or others discovered Africa. So long before the Europeans came. So it is there East Africa has to be perhaps at the heart of India's Africa diplomacy.
Any questions now here?
Like the Gujarati pilot, Ben Zapur, actually brought Vasco da Gama to India.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're right.
Hi sir, I'm Shilpa, an associate research working here. So my question is, when it comes to clean energy cooperation, always discussions are surrounding solar energy and considering the fact that both Africa and India are tropical in terms of geographical context. So apart from solar energy, which other sector can be given more focus in which both India and Africa can come together, scale up and build on to the clean energy transitions?
In energy or general?
In clean energy.
In clean. Yes, so the Solar Alliance is definitely a major part. I think, as you know now, in the renewables, India is becoming quite advanced. So whether it is wind energy or ocean energy or hydrogen, all these are slowly making steady progress. But solar has a good chance mainly because Africa is recipient of sunlight, unlike Europe, almost round the clock. They have water also, but water can be issued, there can be a shortage. That brings us also to the nuclear energy, but with its own attendant risks. The other institution, the infrastructure resilient institution that we have created, that also has quite a few takers in Africa. So while I am not an expert on energy per se, I can feel that Africa and India work fairly closely when it comes, for example, to something like COP, which will hold its annual conference in UAE shortly. But certainly, Africa is on the same page as India when it comes to sustainable development. And one of the goals, if I am not mistaken, is to use more renewables, and that is where convergence comes.
So we have another question online. Could you elaborate on how AU can be integrated more into G20 or G21 from Guru CUP as India?
Yeah, I think this is a very topical question. The unsaid basis of this is that India and other friends of Africa collaborated to bring the African Union into G20. But where do we go from here? I mean, after celebrations are over, how do you implement this decision? It was very nice, the African Union leader was brought in, great feat of immediate implementation. Within 5 minutes of the opening of the G20 summit on 9th September, AU was a member. But the reality is that the African Union lacks institutional, personnel, ideational and financial capability to leverage this great opportunity. When we met recently a gathering of African diplomats, they were not at all clear as to how this will happen. So then I think my view is that 3 countries can collaborate and take the initiative. The troika of the G20, that is India, Brazil and South Africa. and we should be guided by South Africa. We should ask them, what does the African Union need to make sure that it is a proactive member of G20 when they begin their work now in Brazil. That is the first point. And the second point is, once again, indeed the priorities of Africa have been integrated. What do they want? They want focus on development, they want more investment, they want more finance for climate, they want more money for energy transition, they want accelerated implementation of SDGs. It was all done. It is there in National New Delhi Development Declaration, New Delhi, G20 New Delhi Summit Declaration. And my only submission would be that now let us focus on the implementation. We have a challenge because our presidency is about to end. The next guy comes in, President Lula. His ambassador has been saying that we will continue India's legacy, but we know that they will have their own priorities. So it will be a challenge for Indian diplomacy to focus on continuity, but without interfering in Brazilian presidency and later South African presidency. So you have to be careful, you have to be proactive, you have to be astute to make sure that Africa's interests are kept in mind, and really until now the onus lies on African Union. Instead of we chasing them, they should come and tell us, thank you very much, you got us this far, we want to run with you, but can you help us with this, that and the other for a while, and then we will be on our own. That is the approach India and AU need to run.
We had such an invigorating discussion today, and unfortunately due to time constraint we are ending our Q&A session here. Thank you Ambassador Bhatia, and thank you all for the enthusiasm and engagement. There are some critical takeaways from this conversation that we don't come across often or ever, and I would like to take a few moments to reiterate the same for our audience, both here and joining us online. To quote Ambassador Bhatia, without taking Africa into consideration and elevating our relations with the continent, India will not be able to become an aspiring and global power. At least 6 or 7 US, EU, Japan, Australia, UAE and other countries have taken part in Africa, including China, which has not only been huge but also critical. However, one key takeaway worth looking into further after we wrap up this discussion will be on the potential commitment to China-Africa relations that Ambassador mentioned, which must be emulated by India. The India-Africa Summit in 2024 will boost employment opportunities in Africa as well as developments of India. India and Africa together comprise 42% of the world population, and a collaboration will help to develop India-Africa as a whole. You also mentioned the need to change India's policy towards African students, as India should enable them to work in order to strengthen India-Africa relations. The most crucial takeaway, which I would like to repeat and highlight to sum up this discussion with Ambassador Bhatia, is, and I quote, India needs to run its Africa policy at the continental, regional and individual countries level. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Ambassador Bhatia for joining us today. A heartfelt thanks to all our audience members, both online and offline, including our advisors, Mr. K.C. Abraham and our distinguished fellow Vice Admiral MP Muralidharan, who have joined us here in the CPPR office. With this, we would like to close today's event and thank you.